taking 28 lives and leaving 2 injured. Earlier this year, another massacre of similar proportions occurred in our own state at Uvalde Elementary. The Sandy Hook Promise states that 948 school shootings have happened in the United States since 2012. Let that sink in for just a second. 948 school shootings since 2012. That's 948 school shootings in 10 years. Try as we might, there has been minimal action taken at a state level to quell these shootings. And while lawmakers deliberate, children and faculty are put in danger. The Securing Our Schools Act of 2022, proposed by Senator Ted Cruz, seeks to curb gun violence in public schools through increased funding for safety measures and mental health resources. This bill allocates funding to harden schools against possible threats in the form of security cameras, metal detectors, and more. While roughly 91% of schools have security cameras installed building-wide, about only 6% have been able to add metal detectors. Funding for public schools varies by district, meaning some schools have the ability to secure their buildings, while others don't, leaving students and faculty vulnerable. In addition, mental health resources like counseling with licensed professionals will be implemented on school grounds to ensure easy access to quality mental health care. School shootings are preventable when signs of struggle are caught early. On their page, 16 Facts About Gun Violence and School Shootings, the Sandy Hook Promise cites that, quote, in 4 out of 5 school shootings, at least one other person had knowledge of the attacker's plan but failed to report it. And in a comprehensive school shooting study, the Secret Service and Department of Education found that 93% of school shooters planned the attack in advance. When people see the signs and can direct troubled individuals towards proper help, school shootings can and will be prevented. This bill will help distribute responsibility to identify the warning signs of mental struggles that can indicate a plan for violence. This responsibility will be distributed to parents, teachers, school counselors, and resource officers equally. All of this seems rather ambitious, and you may be asking, where is the money coming from to fund this? Thankfully, the funding for this ambitious bill comes from multiple sources: unused COVID-19 funds and local fiscal recovery funds, like Subpart 1 of Part A of Title V of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, and the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 allocates roughly $10 billion to mental health resources alone. Mere billions of dollars will be going towards funding schools with proper safety resources, resource officer training, and mental health resources for students, parents, and faculty. Matt Pierce writes in a 2016 Los Angeles Times article that the estimated cost of remodeling Columbine High School after the shooting was more than $1.2 million. Pierce also states that after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, the new school, which was built, came at a cost of $50 million. How many more times are we going to have to rebuild schools and spend millions per tragedy? This bill may seem as though it's a temporary solution to a larger problem, a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, if you will. But when your child has been shot, you'll do whatever it takes to save their life and stop the bleeding. These atrocities have been occurring for far too long. Everyone, regardless of grade level or faculty position, deserves to feel safe in their school, and parents deserve to have peace of mind when sending their children off.
All right. All right, now we're going to welcome our first negative speaker. Don't forget to introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Can you just close that down?
My name is Sebastian Walker. I'm here with my group, Sky, Anna, Adari, and Sam. We will be negating the Securing Our Schools Act of 2022. And I have four main claims I will be using. I'm going to address the contents of the bill. I'm going to address the history of systemic racism in the United States. I'm also going to address the differences between a counselor and a therapist. And lastly, I'm going to address the issues of money. Firstly, within the bill, on page 7, lines 18 through 20, the bill references secured campus external gates or locked doors that check-in and check-in points. It's just adding protection to the school. I get that. I get that wanting to protect your kids is important. As well as, on page 7 later, it adds internal door locks and access control doors. But you keep adding all these things, all this protection, all these preventative measures. At what point does our schools begin to look more like prisons, right? If you go to drop your kid off at school and he's surrounded by a gate with metal detectors and cops or security guards everywhere, that may be unsettling as a parent. You may not want to do that, right? I wouldn't want my kids being there personally. And later in the bill, at page 16, line 18, the bill addresses not to teach critical race theory or include critical race theory in any program. They also mention not to advocate for abortion or abortion services in any form, which doesn't really make sense. If you want to protect kids, these things aren't necessarily harming them, right? It's just education about abortion and critical race theory and the systems that affect them, right, as they grow in age. Secondly, which leads me into my second point, the history of systemic racism in America, especially rooted in the police, has created generational trust in the citizens. In a country where trust in the government and authorities at an all-time low, it's hard to want to put security officers in schools, right? Because people don't trust the police. People never have and they never will. And I found a study from the state of Illinois that found the average the retirement age for a cop is 55. And so we know 55, as previous generations, the older generation, they've seen more, and more often than not, these older generations have more traditionalist values. They are racist, as a way to put it, and you don't want that conflict in your schools, because the bill does mention hiring retired officers, and that just creates turmoil between students that you wouldn't want to see at all. Third, I found a comparison between the Concordia University of Texas and the Texas Association of School Boards that compares the requirements of being a therapist to being a school counselor. And being a school counselor is 2 years of teaching experience and a 48-hour degree, which isn't anything compared to what it takes to be a therapist. A therapist is at least a master's and passing a licensing exam, as well as postgraduate supervision hours. They want to put counselors in schools, which is a good idea. It's important to embrace mental health and to protect the kids. But how do you get these kids to talk to their counselors when they don't feel comfortable talking to them, when they feel like the counselors don't understand them, when they would rather just talk to their peers and cope that way and communicate that way? Lastly, I would like to mention that the amount of money that is required for the bill claims to be $27.56 billion. If we're looking at the COVID Fiscal Recovery Fund, that only provides $19.53 billion. And that's all of it. That's not just leftovers. Where do you find this extra money, right, in the bills? And when this money could go towards something better, go towards paying your teachers or training your teachers, educating your students about better procedures. I found a source from ZipRecruiter that averaged the teacher salary in the state of Texas, and it came out to $13 an hour. I make $13 an hour, and I work a minimum wage at Academy. That doesn't seem fair to the creators of the future leaders of our generation, of the next generation. Why can't we treat teachers better, pay them better, instead of using this money to turn schools into a prison and like fortify them or put counselors in schools that won't even help the kids. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's for our format. After the first two speeches, we have a period of crossfire. Who's going to speak for now? Okay, great. 2 minutes. All right. You can stay there if you stand up.
All right, so you mentioned that you thought schools might appear more like prisons. But I have a question for you. Are you willing to sacrifice the safety of kids because you don't like the way a gate looks around a school?
Not to not answer your question, I would like to mention that when you make schools look like a prison, and you put these security officers in school, I didn't mention this in my speech, but it makes, can you repeat the question?
Well, are you willing to sacrifice the safety of our children for looks?
There are alternate ways to guarantee safety, right?
So what would those ways be?
Better education and training of the teachers, right? At the Columbine shooting, there was security officers on the school-wide.
Well, it's not just security officers, but gates, metal detectors, alarm systems, quicker response time in order to police officers.
Okay, fair enough. And when I was in high school, my high school had metal detectors, and they didn't stop anything, right? There were still school shooting threats. My school had bomb threats. It didn't prevent, being used as a preventative measure, it didn't prevent anything.
But did you ever have a bomb or school shooting at your school? So it looks like they were prevented in the end.
I mean, a threat is still just as dangerous, right?
Well, a threat is not as dangerous as an active shooter on the school.
Fair enough.
Do you have any questions?
No, I can't say I do. Not much for the question.
All right, nice job. Okay. Hey, don't forget to use the microphones. So they can hear you.
Well, hi, I'm Jada. This is Addie, Selena, and Kalia, and I will be doing the attack speech. So, as our opposition said, that schools would start, thank you, schools would start to look like a prison. As we all know, prison is a school to prison pipeline. So, many of these students are already used to the look of a prison. They already have the sense of having a prison pipeline. But instead of having the sense of being a prisoner, they want to feel like they're safe in school. They want to go to school, get their education, see their friends, and not feel like they have to worry every day of their life, knowing if they're going to be alive or dead for their next period. A community-wide problem demands a community-wide solution. Many people believe that with this bill, we would be putting a burden onto the teachers, which is a very falsified statement. It would be putting a shared issue onto counselors, parents, teachers, and the students. It would make sure that everyone was aware of what was happening in the school. It would make sure that people were informed of what is happening to their students. As our opponents said, they are in fear of having this burden of teachers and having this fear of their funds being spent. This is money that was used for COVID. This money is not being used at this current moment, so we are trying to put it into a safe and secure program that would protect our students. And they worry about their teachers having this burden. In this bill, it completely says, by the Department of Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and the Secretary of Education will be working with these teachers to make sure that they have the proper training to make sure that they were aware of the signs of of school shooting and know how to protect their students and how to protect themselves. There has been multiple times where teachers were in fear of their lives, but they couldn't show that fear to their students because they wanted to make sure that these students knew that everything would be okay. And they had to put themselves as a security, as a blockade, to make sure that their students did not get harmed. Do you really want to see another teacher die to protect their students? No, none of us wants to see anyone die during a school shooting. We want to see happy students who can become further educators, to become college students, to become professors, to become teachers, doctors, lawyers. Also, they said officer interaction. As we all know, police officers don't have the best history with various communities. But that's why you take the proper training, you do the right resources, you put the correct funding into it, and that's how you teach and learn, and how you make sure that students don't feel like they can't talk to someone. That's why we're providing counselors and resource officers. We're providing these students with the ability to have multiple options to talk to. Because some people don't have friends, like our opposition said, oh, you can just talk to your buddy. Not everyone has friends. Some people are loners. So having these options of having mental health counselors, having trained and well-paid mental health counselors would give them the opportunity to talk to someone who knows what they're going through. Having a resource officer. The resource officer would know how to spot the signs of what a school shooting could be. And then the mental health discussion. As years have passed by, mental health has been declining. COVID made a huge decline in many 6 through 12 students. Many of them had to go through Zoom classes, either had on or off learning. And most of these people did not have someone to talk to during this COVID. Now they would have someone who's trained and can make sure that they actually get the resources that they need. Also, this bill would be requiring more counselors in schools, which would require easier access for students. That is all I have to say.
Hello everyone, I'm Sky Hewitt. I am the attack speaker for the negative side, and I would like to start out with the biggest point. Our opponents, they stated that we don't want our students to succeed, and I would like to tell you that is completely not true. We would love our students to succeed. We want them to achieve all of their dreams. However, they can't do that if they don't feel safe with the people around them. Our generation has a disgenerational distrust in the police, and there is no way that we can really break that. And along with the fact of the money, that's the biggest problem with this bill. The bill proposed, the total amount that Ted Cruz needs is $27 billion, $0.56 billion is what you would need. They talked about the COVID fund along with the local official fund, and that money is only $19.53 billion. So where's the extra money going to come from? How are we going to pay our mental health counselors if the teachers are already underpaid? How are we going to have the students trust them if the teachers are themselves and their mental health counselors are already unhappy with how they're being treated? Because the first thing about being a psychologist, which I am currently in college to be, is to make sure that you are okay yourself. So how are they supposed to help the students around them, make sure that they feel safe in their schools and that they have someone to talk to if they're not okay themselves? They mentioned in the first constructive speech, Uvalde. I want to say that that was a former student school shooting, and a lot of school shootings are from students. How are we supposed to protect the students from themselves? And the main source of this is bullying. Students attack other students because they're unhappy with outside situations. How are school counselors supposed to get to the outside homes if the students won't let them inside their lives? Students, they feel all alone because that's how we make them feel. And when you experience bullying, at least as a person, I don't know if any of you have, but you feel like something's wrong with you, and it's not. So how are you supposed to explain to someone else what you feel inside if you're never taught that? So when bullying occurs, you're always told, go tell a teacher, go tell an officer, go tell someone in your school. How are you supposed to tell them if you don't have proof? So then you feel all bottled up inside, and then you act out. And if there are things that you have access to like guns, stuff like that, you become the problem. How is this bill supposed to stop the students? How are we supposed to stop the students from getting inside of the school? When they're students, they go there. Our opponents also mentioned that schools feel like a prison. Or how are we supposed to stop schools from feeling like prisons and looking like prisons? They mentioned that. And it necessarily doesn't mean that they look like a prison. It's they feel like that because of everything else going wrong, going inside, inside the school, everything occurring there. In 2000, Flint, Michigan, there was a 6-year-old that shot a teacher. In 2000, in May, there was a 13-year-old who killed a teacher. It's not just outsiders, it's the students as well. So how are we supposed to protect our administrators like they want us to do? We don't want our teachers to feel burdened. We don't want them to feel completely like they're the ones that have to take action in this situation. So how are we supposed to protect them? And one of the answers was mental health counselors. Mental health counselors, if they're underpaid, they have to go find a better job. If there aren't enough resources, the money issue, how are we supposed to even make this bill exist? Sorry. How are we supposed to make this bill benefit the students? Because that's who really matters. The students are who matters in this. How are we supposed to make them feel safe if they don't trust those around them? That's really everything I have to say. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, it's time for our second crossfire.
I have a question for you, actually. Sorry, give me one second. So, you stated that basically your bill is supposed to help the students and fund mental health advisors and stuff like that. So, how are you supposed to spend millions of dollars on a plan that could fail? Because currently, there are schools with metal detectors, there are schools with police in them, there are evacuation plans already in place for school shootings. How are those things that are already in place, things that you said that you're just going to multiply more of, how are they supposed to help if they didn't before?
Well, as we've clearly seen, sometimes things work, sometimes things don't work. There's been multiple plans where they put money into it and it doesn't work. But if you take the time, you teach the people how to do it correctly, most of these times they weren't being taught correctly. But with this, we're actually training everyone throughout the school. We're teaching the parents how to look out for signs. We're teaching the students how to look out for signs. We're teaching the teachers. Those previous plans were being taught. And as you said, our funds wouldn't be, we don't have funds for it. But these are funds that have been left over from COVID programs that are just sitting there. So do you just want students to keep dying when we have the money to fund and protect them?
No, I never stated that. However, I do believe that while these funds are unused, you cannot fulfill the promises that you already had in your bill. And on top of that, the plan not failing, I personally don't want to put millions of dollars into something that could or could not work. And I also don't want to, if I ever have a child, put them in a school and have to think my own child is going to become a school shooter. That would never be something I would ever want to consider as a parent. Was that the end?
Yeah, it's time.
All right, nice crossfire. So I'm going to say the microphone is still not picking up. So if you want to stay where you are, make sure you're close to the mic. And if not, that mic right there is live also by the podium. All right?
All right, so my opponent keeps bringing up that there's only $26 billion, or what y'all said, in the fund. But according to my research, it can be seen. Josh Christensen, a staff writer at the Washington Free Beacon, wrote, "There is $135 billion in leftover education-related COVID relief." According to CBS News, Jack Fink writes that, quote, "Senator Cruz said his measure would be fully paid by using $3.5 billion in unspent COVID-19 education-related funding, which amounts to more than $135 billion. This is only going to be, what, a fourth of the entire thing to protect our students? This is money not being used. As we can actually see, COVID deaths are decreasing. You can see the CDC actually posted in a 2022 article that COVID deaths are decreasing. And according to another article by Donna St. George, school shootings are at the highest number in 20 years. And this was during the COVID lockdown. So school shootings are actually getting worse. So this is a more pressing matter. Now, you also mentioned that a lot of schools also have metal detectors and everything, but that's the point, is that some have metal detectors, some have security cameras or officers. But as we can see at the tragic Uvalde shooting, the police weren't inside. They didn't go inside. If we had more police officers inside, if we had a better system to lock the doors, make sure they couldn't get in, the gates that you say make it feel like a prison, well, I say the bigger issues is that kids are dying. That is the bigger issue. You mentioned that you want children to succeed. How can they succeed if they're dead? They can't. So this bill is really about preserving the next generation, making sure they can grow up and solve the problem themselves with school shooting. This is an immediate solution. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does something now, and that is what we are fighting for. You also mentioned a lot about the counselors. Well, this bill is increasing the amount of counselors in schools so students have better access. It is promoting mental health, so students will feel safer in going and seeking out help. So that is an important thing to note, is that right now nothing is being done. This bill is something. And like my teammate mentioned, that it may seem like it's putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, but in reality it is an immediate solution that could actually curb this terrible epidemic. Now, it's also mental health. You also mentioned they're not paid as much. The bill allocates about $55,000, I believe, in their salary, which is considered the national average. And these are public schools. These are not colleges. And anytime you are in government, you are considered a service worker. So even military men and veterans, they're not paid as much because they are doing that for something other than themselves. These are counselors that want to be there to help the kids. If they could get paid more elsewhere, they would do that. They're not doing it just for money. They are doing it to protect the children. So these are the people we want in schools, actually. That is all I have to say.
How much time is left?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anna West, and I would first like to say that I have been attending public schools in Texas since I was 6 years old. My mom is a teacher, my sister is a teacher, my grandmother is a teacher, my aunt is a teacher, and they are stressed out of their minds. They have been as long as I can remember, and the amount of pressure and the expectations that the state of Texas puts on our teachers is ridiculous. And having to expect our teachers to have this responsibility, have this extra training, that they are expected to put their lives at stake every day, showing up to work in case something that is really the state of Texas' fault, and now they're the ones that are responsible for all these children. Over 50% of Texas households have guns. And as of September of 2021, it became legal that you do not have to have a license to carry. It can be open, it can be concealed. Literally, somebody in this room could have a gun right now. And I would just like to point out that most of the time when there's been a school shooter, it has been a child who had access to firearms at home. And because the state of Texas allows so many people to have guns, these kids can go home. If they had a bad day at school, they can go home and grab a gun and show up the next day and do whatever they want with it. And school counselors, yes, that would be a great idea, but a lot of times the real issue is not even about the security in schools, because yes, there were always bomb threats. There were always like threats. I mean, I grew up in San Antonio. That, depending on what area you go to school in, like that place can be kind of ratchet. So sometimes you don't feel safe at school, and students do deserve to be able to focus on learning. But I just feel like that the act was written by somebody who, during COVID, left the country to go on vacation with his family, and now he wants to use those funds from COVID to do something to fix a problem that should be fixed, that has nothing to do with securing schools. It has everything to do with the fact that there are too many people that have access to guns. And I haven't heard anybody mention the license to carry laws. I haven't heard anybody talk about that. And that's really, I mean, where are the kids getting the guns if they're not at home? And yes, mental health is a very, 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 very important thing, and so many children just don't have the proper home life, and they don't have the proper attention they need, and they do have bad mental health, and yes, they get bullied like Sky said, and yes, that is a huge issue, and yes, school counselors are trained, and we should have more mental health professionals in schools, but I just don't think the issue is securing the schools. I think the issue is securing Texas. It's the fact that there are so many guns, so many firearms, so many weapons that so many people have access to that shouldn't. That's the issue. And so we're expected to put all this money into these schools where half the time in Texas, kids, there are not enough resources for children. There are not enough resources for teachers. Teachers are not getting paid enough. We do not have enough administrators. My sister is a first grade teacher, and she has 37 6-year-olds in her classroom. And she's the only first grade teacher at her school because they couldn't find anybody else to hire. And she's expected to, be trained to now, if there's a threat, she has to somehow figure out how to get all of these 6-year-olds under desks and still risk her life for them? Yes, when teachers show up to work every day, that is a responsibility that teachers have. But that should not be their main goal. They should be able to show up to work every day to teach their students. And when they have to go to training after school, after they've been working for 8 hours trying to teach and control all these kids, and then they have to go to training worried about things that really they should not have to be responsible for. This is the state of Texas. This is Ted Cruz blaming the state of Texas. Why is he trying to cover up the fact that so many people have access to guns? And now he's blaming it on schools. I yield my time.
All right, nice one. Time for a grand crossfire. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a grand crossfire where all the team members can be involved. We can ask questions. Please use the microphones.
Do you mind if I say something first? Is that okay?
Is it a question?
Yes.
Because this is time for questions.
Yes, it is a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to know, what sources did you say one more time for your numbers?
My numbers? I did the Washington Beacon, and there's people from the senator there, as well as I did CBS News.
Okay. I found a different source from RaiseYourHands.org. It's basically Texas's official log for education, and it says that the
Keep
COVID-19...
it to questions, please. Keep it to questions.
Sorry.
Yep. Next question from anyone up there.
So, as our opposition has been saying multiple times, why do you believe that you should focus more on the beauty of the school and not the actual safety of the school. You've been talking about how you blame the schools, but we're not blaming the schools.
It was never about the beauty of the school. It's about the environment that the kids are in. If the kids, it may not look like a prison. It may have a gate and metal detectors and security officers everywhere. It's the student's opinion, how they feel inside the school, whether they feel safe or not. And when you put all this stuff in the school, despite it being more preventative and safer from an outside perspective, inside the school, the students don't feel safe.
Can I add on to what Sebastian was saying? Is that a large reason why we were kind of trying to explain, like, we don't think that that environment is like healthy, is because when, like how I stated previously, when we're forcing teachers to like do extra training and put in all this extra work, that is like a morale like deflator of not only the administrators, the teachers, but the students. And when the students can feel that the teachers don't want to be there, the students are also probably even more don't want to be there.
So I have a question for y'all. Y'all don't want to pass this bill, obviously. What is an immediate solution? Because gun control is not an immediate solution. What is an immediate solution you propose to save kids' lives right now?
I think that, right, not gun control because that's just not realistic, but I think a large, kind of another point that I made was that it's the home life for the kids who can go home and grab a gun and go to school the next day because they had a bad day at school.
So how will the government fix the home life?
Right. Child Protective Services, if a child has bad mental health and the parents are doing nothing about it, but the parents have the money and have the resources to own a gun, I think that needs to be looked into. And so I think that the money that is being used to pay for all this stuff for schools should be going to things like Child Protective Services and foster care and things like that that is so poorly funded currently, and I think that could be a major, I think that could be fixed very quickly.
All right, next up in the Grand Crossfire. We're going to do two sets of summary speakers. So our first summary speaker.
Hi, my name is Selena. So I'll be doing the first summary speech, and I just want to let it be known that the bill that we are trying to pass, or trying to get passed, is, as Adi said, an immediate solution. It's something that we can do now, right? How long do we have to wait for any kind of gun control to pass? We have two parties in our government right now who are constantly bickering, who are constantly fighting over who's right and who's doing wrong and whatever, right? How long are we gonna, how many more school shootings are we going to have to witness before we have some kind of gun control? Whereas this bill is providing something that we can do now. The opposing side keeps mentioning that the environment, that the schools are going to look like prisons, right? Well, it's not necessarily about creating a beautiful environment for these kids. I mean, obviously we want them to feel safe at school, we want them to come to school wanting to learn and things like that, but we are trying to provide multiple layers of security in schools. We are trying to add metal detectors when they're walking in, so we make sure no students are walking in with guns. We are adding security cameras all around the campus so that we're able to keep eyes where you normally wouldn't be able to see students or be able to see other people, right? We're adding more lighting to the campuses so that they're not so dark. There's not areas for anyone to hide or anything like that. These are several layers of security measures implemented to the school in order to slow down the school shooter, right? If we have locked doors at the front, it's going to take them a while before they get in. And doing that, it stalls the school shooter from coming in and allows law enforcement to get here quicker, right? If teachers are trained, if we have peepholes on the classroom doors, teachers can see who's outside, right? We don't have to have windows or open door classes or anything like that. Teachers can have their own security measures within their classrooms like that. You know, there's products that are being sold to schools, where you can lock the doors and it's hard for people to get in. These are all just safety measures that allow students and teachers to remain safer for a longer period of time before a school shooter can even access them, right? So why would we want to get rid of those? Students want to come to school, to learn and to be with their friends, as Jada had mentioned, right? And so by providing these kinds of measures, we're allowing that. On top of that, when we provide mental health resources to students, this bill covers it from grades K through 12. In middle school is when we start seeing school resource officers and mental health counselors being brought in. When students from a young age, especially middle school, they're undergoing hormones, they're undergoing a lot of issues in their minds, right? They're growing up, they're going through puberty, they have a lot going on. They don't want to have to deal with worrying about who's going to come into the school and take their life or take their friend's life, take their teacher's life. They shouldn't have to worry about those things, right? When we provide mental health counseling from a young age, we start teaching these kids what it means to cope in healthy ways, what it means to express our feelings, what it means to create boundaries and everything. All of those which are healthy forms of emotional intelligence, right? The opposing side mentioned that they don't want their own students to, shoot teachers or shoot each other or anything like that, right? Well, when we provide healthy emotional intelligence, we don't have to deal with that. We don't have to worry about students going off on their teachers or anything like that, right? Because we're setting the example of what it means to be healthy-minded individuals. Those mental health resources will also help us spot out individuals who may be struggling, who may need some extra care, who may need some extra love because they're not receiving it at home, right? That's what it's for. It's to provide solutions now. It's to bring safety and everything to our students now instead of having to worry, am I going to see my kid after when they get off, when they get off from school? We shouldn't have to worry about that. I shouldn't have to worry if my sister is going to make it out of high school. That's not what this is about. We're not talking about gun control. We're talking about solutions for now, right? That's what it is. That's what this bill will do, is protect our students now and protect our future, because that's what children are. They're our future, right? I yield my time.
All right.
My name is Sam, and I'm going to be doing the negatives first summary. Can you hear me okay?
You can use that mic too if you want.
Okay.
Did it go off?
Yeah.
You know what? Just
Okay.
there you go.
I think we're good now.
All right.
So, the affirmative did open up by saying that they're focusing on how much money it takes to rebuild a school, but I want to ask, why is this a priority? Objects and school property can be replaced, but the lives of students and faculty that are lost during these tragedies cannot be replaced with any amount of money. They say 4 out of 5 students have knowledge of attackers' plans but do nothing, and that 93% of shooters have plans of the act before carrying it out. Identifying warning signs are ideal, but we don't live in an ideal world. Unfortunately, because of negative stigma around mental health in our country, it makes students who are at risk and struggling more hesitant to reach out for help. I agree that increasing mental health resources is a good start at preventing these acts of violence, but how can we get the students who are in need of help to come and get help from those resources? They say we can put in place methods of reporting from peers to say that their peer needs help, that they're at risk. But because of this stigma, they're going to be hesitant to want to reach out to let their superiors know. They say we're only putting a Band-Aid on the situation instead of actually fixing the issue. However, the security measures the Act proposes have already been in place when school shootings have occurred in the past. So isn't adding more of the same security measures that have already failed just putting a Band-Aid on the situation, as they said before? A 2021 article by researchers at Hamline University and Metropolitan State University in Minnesota examined 133 school shootings. The studies concluded there was no association between the presence of armed officers and difference of violence. Basically, there have been multiple instances where an SRO has been present on campus, such as in the Parkland shooting, where 17 people were killed. So by placing more of these officers that have already not been able to do their job, how are we going to prevent anything from happening? It's true school shootings have increased. They've increased even with all of these solutions already in place: metal detectors, access to mental health resources, locks on doors. Over and over again, they have failed. So why are we trying to do more of the same? The definition of insanity is doing the same act over and over and expecting different results. So why are we expecting different results now? I yield my time.
All right, it's time for our last speech from the affirmative.
Shootings are terrifying, of course. They're detrimental to educators, communities, parents, and children. They're traumatizing to young minds. Coming into a school as a child, ready to share your bright ideas with the world, only to be forced, having your innocence crushed by a tragic event that shouldn't have happened on a place where learning is the main priority. The Securing Our School Safety Act advocates for the lives of children and educators, and it implements security measures and ensures safety of K through 12. The bill's use of the funds covers costs of security measures that schools in low-income areas may not be able to cover themselves. According to Politics, Adequacy, and Education, written by Dr. Vivian Erkba, school districts in urban areas have a large number of kids who are at or below the poverty line. Urban school districts are overburdened and underfunded. Well, the School Safety Act will use the money from untouched COVID funds and fiscal recovery funds in order to make security measures more accessible to low income and decrease financial burdens of public schools. Now, this includes things like metal detectors, x-rays, things like that. You guys mentioned that it'll make the school look more like a prison system, but to be honest, the aesthetic of the school is really irrelevant to the actual lives that are inside. I'd rather fear to the concern of the lack of security measures that could potentially lead to more deaths of innocent lives. The Act provides external safety measures and internal guidance as well. By bringing in professional mental health, people who have trained for that type of stuff, in comparison to someone of a peer who you just walk up to and dump on, they could be struggling with something that they're going through as well. Students struggling with mental health, by bringing this in, they have an outlet to someone who has actually been trained to give them advice that could further prevent acts of violence or notions of mass shootings. Another thing was about how police are controversial when it comes to different communities. This is true, but bringing police who are trained from this bill will have officers who understand the disconnect between communities and that they can take steps to bring this connection forward. There was something you mentioned about how teachers shouldn't have to carry the burden of sacrificing their lives for their students, but my mom is a teacher, right? She comes home every day, she tells me about all of her students and how much they matter to her. Just because one second, I apologize. excuse me, my mother's a teacher, right? She cares a lot for her students. There are police on campus who are trained there for that reason. She shouldn't have to jump in front of a life because she cares so much about someone. She's there to teach and enlighten the students, and that should be her goal, not to sacrifice herself for something that she didn't know was going to happen. With more police on campus, we can ensure that they take the steps forward, that they apply the training that will protect the students and save teachers' lives and students as well. I am finished.
All right. Next question. All right, our last negative speaker.
Hi everyone, I'm Adari. As my team members have stated, a plethora of reasons as to why we should not allow the passing of this act. One of them being is that we need, our opponents discussed wanting a solution for now in the moment, but we need the solution that would be better would be one that focuses on the mental health of our students so that they can process these overwhelming emotions that they're going through that they might not be learning from their parents. So we need to have the mental health professionals that are discussed in the act, and it does have good things. However, we are unsure if it will be somebody who is a counselor who only needs 48 hours to get a certification, or somebody who has gone through a master's degree and also had a PhD degree. We need not just a solution for now, we need the best solution, because these are our children, these are our siblings, and we need to help them in the best way possible. Also, it's not a secret that the U.S. survived off of slavery. Our history is tainted with discrimination, stereotypes, racism. This act will only serve to disproportionately target students of color. As mentioned, we have already begun to see these policies being implemented in our schools. As Sebastian mentioned, there's a report from 2017 from the NEA that show that Black students are disproportionately arrested in schools. And we should not be placing any student in a situation where they could be receptive to police brutality. And even if we do